When you think of the goose, a lot of people don't realize that you can actually call these amazing birds. I am Devin Roth, a 16-year-old who loves to call Canadian geese.
Devin, will you be quiet up there?
I have been hunting since I was about 9 years old. I love the sport and try to do it as much as possible. I started goose calling when I was 13. The sport is exciting, intense, and requires some skill and practice. You have to practice some of the calling techniques to actually get close to these birds. I practice goose calling all throughout the year, even in the off-season on my free time. I usually just pick up one of my calls and try new things. I usually watch and learn new techniques that I will also use. After I perfect these helpful techniques, I usually test them in the field. Sometimes they work, and sometimes it is just hard to get the geese to come to your spot. I have purchased about 5 different calls and now only work with 2 of the best ones in my collection, one being the Canadian Hammer 2, and the best one out of the whole bunch, the Zinc Power Clucker. I have just purchased the Zinc call this past season in 2007. I first tried this call at the world's foremost outfitter, Cabela's, and then proceeded to purchasing it. Each call has a different tone. Wooden calls have a rougher sound to them depending on the wood. The polycarbonate calls have a clear, harder to blow sound. Then there is an expensive, but the best, acrylic calls. There are also custom calls made by ordinary people that dominate the market. My father, Scott Roth, has been watching me perfect my calling and practice all the time. He usually also tells me to stop calling because he wants some peace and quiet.
Devin has really been practicing his calling and has really come around this year in his calling. We have a lot more different calls that he's been using.
When you have found a call that is easy for you to blow, it is time to start learning some of the calls to use out in the field.
Well, Devin has been bringing down some geese with the call, calling them in, and then he has opportunities to get some shots off, and they have brought home a few geese.
Some of the calls include the hail call, which gets the bird's attention when they are out in the distance, the double cluck or greeting call, which excites the geese to come even closer to the feeding or resting grounds, the comeback call, which is used when the birds have flown past your setup and you want to lead the geese back to your decoys, and the laydown call, which is when the geese are approaching your setup for those last couple of yards and you want them to commit to landing. These calls are not easy to blow, so it requires some practice in perfecting these calls. Hopefully, if I keep practicing these calls, I will eventually become one of the best. I will eventually enter contests and keep buying new calls and perfecting those. I am Devin Roth, and I will keep goose hunting and calling.